tried to get in touch with Joe Rogan. I said, I'm going to be in Texas for book-related stuff. I would love to be on. I did not hear back from Rogan. And as many of you know, I've been on the Rogan show twice. I don't know that I am eligible to be back on, in the sense that when I've found that Rogan says something I disagree with over the last few years, I criticize it. And I always couch it as, this doesn't mean I personally hate the guy. This doesn't mean we couldn't have a good conversation. In fact, I would welcome the opportunity to try to figure out what is it that happened with Rogan? Was it
David Pakman is absolutely losing his mind as he reacts to this clip where Joe Rogan said this about David Pakman live on the David Pakman show, on the David Pakman show YouTube channel. And David Pakman just seems to be very upset with what Joe Rogan said in this clip here. And David Pakman is just reacting to it, absolutely losing his mind. So let's go ahead into this clip here where Joe Rogan said this one specific thing about David Pakman, and David Pakman reacts to it live on the David Pakman show, on the David Pakman show YouTube channel.
Moving to Texas and changing the people around him that changed his views on so many issues? What was it? So in any case, for me, none of this stuff is personal. I did not hear back from Rogan. So I don't think I'm going to be back on. In the midst of this, I was sent this clip of Rogan speaking to actor Woody Harrelson. This is really tough to watch. I won't even preview what's in it. Let's just jump in.
Comedy Mothership.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
It's fun. It's a great place. My buddy Jimmy Dore is there this weekend, who's also great, and he's filming his comedy special there this weekend.
Really?
Yeah, Jimmy Dore is amazing. He's another guy that's risen as an independent journalist. He's a comedian.
So first of all, I do not believe that Jimmy Dore is a journalist, but I also don't believe that I'm a journalist. I don't think any of us are journalists. I think we are all commentators. We're just giving our opinions on things. And this is already a media literacy problem that we have in this country. Is it reporting or is it commentary?
And he started his show basically just making fun of political things. And then during the pandemic, got vaccine injured and really got kind of red-pilled and kind of became like the voice of truth and reason. And, you know,
he was vaccine injured, and now we can, as a result of the injury, we can now count on Jimmy Dore to tell us the truth.
Another guy who's been completely outcast by supposedly progressive people for just telling the truth.
Now, of course, I don't even know that it's accurate to say Jimmy Dore has been outcast by progressive people. This is one of the things that's really important to understand. When you change your views and you go, hey, actually the vaccines are fill in the blanks, everything Jimmy Dore has said, which isn't true, and it doesn't really seem like Trump's actually that bad. And, you know, I don't want to misquote Jimmy Dore, but, you know, this kind of playing coy with like, I'm as left as anyone, but like Harris, no, you know, Trump's actually not what people say. Once you start doing that, it's not that you're outcast because you're willing to tell some truth that nobody on the left wants to hear. You just lose any connection to the values and principles of progressivism, which include that we follow the science, we try to separate our feelings from the facts, we oppose authoritarianism, and this is the kind of scariest part. There's a lot of people in what I refer to as the revolutionary left, which I don't even really know that is the left. There is a wing or a sort of through line of people who at some point considered themselves to be nominally on the left, who are just enamored with authoritarianism and often authoritarian leaders and authoritarian dictators. And there's really nothing there that is leftism as I recognize it, where leftism is really libertarian, small L libertarian, where you say, let's get out of people's lives, except for places where we have a really good case that government should be involved. There are things that are too big to just handle in the libertarian way, and then we say government should be involved there. Healthcare would be one of them. Collecting taxes would be another one of them. Doing the roads would be another one of them. Military would be another one. So like the hyper-libertarian would say, government shouldn't even do military. We should leave it to private armies and they can be contracted for. No, right? So the small L libertarianism of the left that I recognize and consider myself a part of would say, a lot of this stuff, let's just keep the government out. I don't need the government directing, how we do mobile phone development. Let's let Apple and Samsung and whoever, right? But in some areas, I don't want the libertarian version of mercenary armies. Let's have the government do military. Okay, you guys get it. The problem is that the rhetoric of a lot of this populism has started to become indistinguishable left and right. And then they start playing coy with authoritarianism. And then we go, guys, there's nothing on the left that we recognize here. So I don't care about Jimmy Dore in the sense of saying we have cast him out from the left. I just don't hear him say anything that still places him on the left. He has segregated himself by virtue of what he has started to say. No one has cast him out.
If you guys enjoy content like this, make sure to go ahead and like the video, comment your thoughts, subscribe to the channel. It would help me out a lot. Let's get back to the video.
Inconvenient truth.
Inconvenient. But I guess the progressives, are they
By the way, Woody Harrelson seems to have no idea what's going on.
now the conservatives? We got to change the term because progressives seem a lot less progressive.
Yeah.
I really felt quite,
I think
during
they got
this whole
co-opted.
thing, I felt quite,
I think they got co-opted, and I think it was on purpose. I think there was some very sophisticated psychological
This is the Alex Jones PSYOP perspective.
manipulation that was involved, and a lot of money was being spent.
I wish they told us who spent the money and how, and also kind of like why too.
In order to push some very specific narratives.
For what reason?
And they did a great job of it. They did a great job of it, but we're finding out because of the Department of Government Efficiency that most of this was funded by our own tax dollars, which is really fucking crazy.
Now, this is another one that this is like 12 conspiracies. Another one that they're pushing now is even that like shows like mine, without my knowledge, are funded by USAID through shadowy nonprofits who then come and buy ads on the show. Just completely made up. And it's funny that Rogan has fallen hook, line, and sinker for Doge is finding all of this stuff. Doge still has not found a single instance of demonstrated fraud that they have proven. When Caroline Levitt holds up papers and she goes, look, 30 grand for a DEI program. First of all, DEI programs aren't fraud. You might think that they're bullshit. You might think we don't need them, but they're not fraud. And also, we're going to solve this problem 30 grand at a time. I'm sorry, we're not.
A lot of these NGOs that supported a lot of these crazy riots and all these different things that were happening in our cities was really supported by our own tax dollars. And it was just a subversion of public discourse. Instead of allowing people to figure out what's right and what's wrong, they pushed what they wanted you to say, and anybody who deviated from that was canceled. And because of the fact that before Elon bought Twitter, the left had complete, total control over the narrative because they owned all the social media sites and they were in lockstep with the government. So
now, of course, I don't know when he's referring to. As many of you know, the Twitter files, which were supposed to explosively show that Twitter was biased on the left, showed that both the Trump administration and the Biden campaign, right, one's in power, had back channels to say to Twitter, we find these accounts problematic. Trump and Biden both had that.
Here's what looks like happened in this clip. David Pakman, a political commentator and the host of the David Pakman Show, recently said he tried to reach out to Joe Rogan while he was in Texas for a book tour. He wanted to be a guest on Joe Rogan's show again. He's been on there twice before, and he felt that, that they could have had a solid conversation, even if they would have disagreed on a couple of things. But he never heard back from Joe Rogan, not a single word. And shortly after that, a clip surfaced of Joe Rogan talking with actor Woody Harrelson, and that's where things just kind of took a turn. And Joe Rogan brings up Jimmy Dore, praising him as someone who's become a voice of truth and reason, someone who was supposedly vaccine injured during the pandemic, and someone who's now seen as an outcast by the progressive left for just telling the truth. That's when David Pakman seems to really lose it, because from his view, this is completely misleading. First, he says Jimmy Dore isn't even a journalist. He's a comedian with opinions, just like Joe Rogan and just like David Pakman himself. But more importantly, David Pakman said this idea Dore was cast out for speaking truth is false. The reason many on the left distance themselves from Dore, he argues, is because Dore began spreading ideas that totally went against progressive values, like undermining vaccines, executing authoritism, and even defending Donald Trump on certain issues. And then comes the part that really hits David Pakman personally. Joe Rogan name drops Jimmy Dore as a trusted truth teller, but David Pakman's name, nowhere, and not even a mention. And remember, David Pakman's been on the show before, too. But to David Pakman, it feels like he's being left out of a conversation completely because he pushed back on Joe Rogan's takes in the past. And in response, David Pakman doesn't hold back. He says maybe he's no longer eligible to be on Rogan's show because he criticizes Joe Rogan too much. But he makes it clear that none of it is personal. He still thinks they can have a good conversation. And he even says publicly, I would welcome the opportunity. But the way Rogan praises Jimmy Dore while ignoring people like David Pakman speaks volumes to how Rogan's platform is shifting. From here, David Pakman even takes the conversation more broad. He starts breaking down how this new wave of populist, anti-establishment commentary coming from people who once called themselves progressive is becoming harder and harder to separate from right-wing talking points. And that's the real concern. He says once you start playing coy with authoritism, there's nothing left about your message that resembles progressivism. He then pushes back on how some people now say left and right politics don't even matter anymore. But David Pakman pushes back hard on that. He's arguing that true progressivism is rooted in facts, science, and resisting authoritarian control, not drifting into conspiracies and culture war rhetoric just because it's popular. By the end of this clip, things got even more tangled. Woody Harrelson throws in some vague ideas about physical manipulation during the pandemic, and Joe Rogan enhances it. They both suggest that public discourse was hijacked by the government, and that social media was used to control narratives, and that people like Jimmy Dore were just trying to speak the truth and got punished for it. And David Pakman's final point, there's no conspiracy here. The reason people don't like Jimmy Dore and others fall out to favor with the left is simple. They stop aligning with the values that define the movement. No one kicked them out, they just walked. In the end, David Pakman feels like he's being shut out of the very conversation he used to be a part of. All while Joe Rogan promotes people he believes have fallen for conspiracy or misinformation. And that moment where Joe Rogan praises Jimmy Dore and says nothing about David Pakman that's what really hit a nerve on David Pakman himself. I mean, he's very upset about it. Let me know what you guys think about this video in the comments, and I'll see you guys on the next topic.